What's going on, guys? Just here getting some work done at the house like I always do. It's pretty hot in Portland, so we went and bought one of these AC units. I'm an awful handyman, but managed to put that one up pretty good. So just wanted to, as I get into this or get towards the end of this hypertrophy phase, just wanted to kind of go over fatigue and fatigue management when it comes to expectations and lifting. So as you get towards the end of a hypertrophy phase, you'll go into either, for what I'm doing, I got this from Fortitude Training, and kind of what I've always thought too, as far as deloads go, but I'm trying it this way with what Dr. Scott Stevenson put out on his ebook, is to do like a 6-week blast, which is a heavy volume hypertrophy phase, and then to do a 2 to 3 week cruise, which is lower the volume but keep the intensity high. I've always done that with the deload, but I've never done it for more than a week, and I've never pushed hypertrophy as much as I have. So the expectation going in towards the end of the hypertrophy phase was to be able to just manage fatigue and the weights within the RPE as much as possible, and not really be too concerned with the actual weight lifted, or the I guess the weight on the bar. You want to be concerned with the weight lifted. You want to push and hit that RPE, but don't really try to compare the numbers you're hitting towards the end of a hypertrophy block towards the numbers you would hit at the end of a peaking block. You know, there may be times where, say you're a 500-pound bencher and 315, 345 feels heavy, because you've accumulated so much fatigue and so much volume that that's just the way it is, and that's a good sign that you're ready to do a deload. So looking at some of the aspects of what to expect during volume phases is to be okay with having your weight feel heavier and not be able to get as much as you think you should be getting during that phase, which is why I tend to have a lot of my lifters not do too much heavy work. I had one guy ask me if he could just do some heavy singles, just work up to heavy single and then do the rest of his work, just to get a feel for things. And I told him that as long as you're a mature lifter, well, one, I told him 1 rep in training really doesn't build any type of strength or foundation, and that's the goal. And then secondly, if you're a mature lifter, you can probably get away with that and realize that, okay, I'm not going to be my strongest, so it's going to feel heavier than it's supposed to be. And what you don't want to do is have it feel heavy and then you just scrap the entire program and think it's not working for you. My last prep, I didn't do any squats over 400 pounds in my off season, and ended up squatting 777, which is a 55-pound meet PR. So I'd say it worked out pretty well, but I didn't allow myself to get too caught up in the numbers and the weight being lifted, but rather got more involved with how it felt and what muscles I was working, which is the whole point of the hypertrophy phase to begin with. So focus on those things. Know that fatigue's gonna kick your ass. It kicks everyone's ass, and to just push through it and keep working and hit those RPs and be realistic with your RPs. Don't chase weight. Don't chase numbers. Hit your RP. Hit your percent. Whatever you have going on in your training. And that's why I like RPE better, because it allows you to adjust to fatigue and just work. Just put in work, and you'll be fine in the long run as long as you have a well thought out plan. So stay tuned for some of the deload stuff that I'm doing. Intensity still staying high, but volume is dropped way down. Do it for a week or two, see how things feel, then bump back up to hypertrophy. I'll catch you guys later. So here's some of the training from the last week, and to kind of go into a little bit more detail on fatigue management and the purpose of a deload. What I found and what I've talked to people is that what they seem to like is to keep the intensity high and cut the volume in half the first half of the week, and then the second half of the week cut the intensity a little bit more and keeping the volume where it's at 50%. Now I personally like to keep the intensity relatively high throughout, just because I feel like that allows me to have the best mindset going into training, and it also allows me to transition pretty well into the next week of training. So the whole point of a deload week or a transition week is to be able to hit the next week feeling fresh and feeling good and ready to lift again. So you have to find what works best for you, and to be quite honest with you, what works best for me may not work for you. And some people may need less intensity, more volume. Some people do like the blood flow stuff. Some people just do 50% of everything the whole week. So it's a little bit of trial and error, but from what I've gathered and what I've used with my clients is intensity stays high, volume gets cut in half, and that seems to allow for a pretty good amount of fatigue reduction. So the way to garnish fatigue is through hypertrophy, through volume, the most. Obviously, there's other types of fatigue as well, but the fatigue we're trying to get rid of is the fatigue curve from volume. So the best way to do that is to mitigate the volume as long as it takes for you to start feeling good again. Now, some people may deload for a week, some people may deload for 2 weeks, and that's why I feel like it's important to keep the intensity high so that you're still putting in work and you're still going to the gym with an intent. If you have everything kind of light, more like a pump session, you're not going into the gym with an intent to improve. You're just kind of going through the motions. So I like to set up my deloads or transitions as a day of intent to get better. And if you can do that with the pump stuff and that works for you, that's awesome. But you have to have a certain mindset so that you can improve week to week and not really have these lackadaisical weeks just because you're deloading. And typically, without being in the hypertrophy phase, I wouldn't deload into a meet. Typically, I'll do 12 to 14 week meet prep, and then just go straight through. And I will just, as the weights get heavier, it kind of limits the volume that you can do to begin with. And that's just something that I've learned over the years with myself and with a lot of my clients, is that if you're a smart coach, there's really no need for a deload leading into a meet, just because you can manage fatigue throughout the weekly process of setting up the numbers and setting up the training. Now, some weeks will be heavier than others, some weeks will be lighter than others, but as long as the volume continues to reduce, you'll feel better week to week, and that's a good sign that you're dropping the fatigue at a good rate. If you feel beat up and you feel like you're losing some momentum going into the weeks, then that's something that you have to look into. But you want to be able to manage that and mitigate that as much as possible before it happens. And a good way, and one of the only ways to realize that, is to actually push yourself in the off season and kind of see what your threshold is for what you're able to do, and by that you can determine how you want to push your training come a meet prep. So for me, this 6 weeks of just blasting hypertrophy, things in the 5 to 10 rep range for heavy compound movements, and then beyond that doing some pump sets of 12 to 20 to 30 reps. Definitely not used to that, and that thrashed me in 6 weeks, and there's no way. My strength started to decline a little bit this week in my upper body, so I know that got pushed probably too far to the limit doing the 3 days of pressing. So I'll be able to kind of rework that and retool that this next phase to allow me to continue to progress throughout the whole 6 weeks. And legs felt fine, back felt fine, everything feels really strong in that department. So that volume right there is good for those extremities. But being able to figure out what works best for your upper body training, what works best for your lower body training, it's not always going to be the same. So you have to be able to have the intuition to know when to increase volume, decrease volume, push the load, and if it works for your lower body, it may not work for your upper body, and vice versa. And to be okay with that, and to be able to push those things in the direction they need to go, and be smart enough to make those decisions and not kind of be stuck in your own program. So that's pretty much all I have about fatigue and deload and transition, guys. So if you like the video, if you like the message, make sure that you subscribe and give a like. If you guys want some other things to talk about, nutrition, other training stuff, feel free to leave a comment and I'll get to that as soon as possible. I have a nutrition Q&A coming up, so I'll be able to pump that out and get you guys some nutrition talk going on. And until then, I'll catch you guys next time.